and yet atoms have no solidity. They're just empty space in effect. They're just energy. They're not solid at all. How can something that's not solid make up a solid world? It can't. So what's going on here? Well, the world isn't solid. That's why the atoms don't have to be solid. It's illusion. It's like a computer disk with information on it playing out in the computer, and the computer takes that information and puts it on the screen in the form of texts and colors and graphics, etc. Well, that's what our brain does in a much more sophisticated way. Our screen is in here. So we have the illusion of it being out there, but it's actually in here. Now, once you start realizing that, then what people were describing in terms of seeing a human body change into another form and then back again, which at first you think not possible, becomes perfectly logical, because it's called shape-shifting. And again, you see this in ancient accounts all over the world, in the shaman and the ancient people and the legends. And people, when they hear about shape-shifting and descriptions of shape-shifting, they say, you can't shift from a solid body to a solid body, it's ridiculous. Yes, it is. I hold my hands up, it is. But that's not what's happening. The only place the shift takes place physically is in here. What's happening is there's an energetic, a vibrational shift, which changes the information that the five senses are picking up, changes therefore the information that is encoded in the electrical signals going to the brain, and the brain now decodes the new information. And it's basically like watching a screen, television, and you've got the zapper button, and you go channel 1, channel 2, channel 1. The screen's just shape-shifted. Why? Because the television's been given different information to decode very quickly, and that's what shape-shifting is. So what I'm doing in the event Saturday is going from A to B to C, right the way through this, going through the nature of reality, going through the reptilian aspect of this and what that's all about, and why, where they come from, and all this stuff, and also the world today, and what's really happening with the swine flu, with the economic collapse, with the ever faster gathering Orwellian state around the world. And then in the last section, I look at what we can do about it. Because, you know, just to finish this whole point, the few can only control the many if the many control each other. Because I've got a friend who works in science and alternative medicine, etc. And he's got an associate who is an eye expert. And he has just completed a project, I don't agree with it, mind, which is researching iris scan technology. And in doing this research, he looked very deeply through a microscope into 2,300 pairs of eyes. And he said to my friend, and he didn't know that he was a friend of mine, had an association with me. He said, you know the strangest thing that I found in this research? He said about 4% of the eyes I looked at were of reptilian type, right? And as I've looked through and researched this, I would say that this reptilian human hybrid bloodline network, which manifests as the British royal family, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, and these elite families that control the system, I reckon 4% is about right of their relationship to the general population, and it's becoming more and more apparent to people, more and more people, that far out as this whole reptilian connection seems, the evidence is moving that way all the time. You know, when I first came across it, like I've just described, and I went into a search engine on the internet and I put in various words like reptilian extraterrestrial, reptilian alien, all that stuff, a handful of pages come up. Put those words in now, tens of thousands come up, you know, and it's time that, or a time when humanity's going to realize that the world's not just a little bit not like they thought it was. It is absolutely nothing like they thought it was. But, you know, it beats watching the game shows, doesn't it? I mean, you know, we're in interesting times.
In Freedom Road, you mentioned the 2012, like as an end time for this game of them to close.
Well, you know, I think 2012 is a diversion, and I think we're going to see that diversion exploited with major Hollywood movies and all the rest of it. When I first became aware of the fact the world was not like I thought it was 20 years ago, one of the first things that I understood was that there was an energetic change coming, a vibrational change that was going to act like a spiritual alarm clock. It was going to wake people up from their amnesia, from their coma. And they were going to start to realize not only the world was different to what they thought it was, but they were different to what they thought it was. They weren't Joe Public, they weren't Ethel Jones and Charlie Smith. They were infinite, eternal consciousness, all that is, has been, ever will be, having an experience as Charlie Smith and Ethel Jones, which is a fundamentally different way of viewing reality and yourself. That's the power. That's, I've got no power. And demonstrably over the period since 1990, when I started to understand this, and I wrote my first book on these subjects called Truth Vibrations, which was describing this vibrational change. And so when people talk about there's an energy change coming and 2012 is when it culminates, you would think that I, of all people, would say, yeah, see, I wrote this 20 years ago, yeah, 2012. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is the energy change is quite blatantly having an effect on people, because, you know, I've been a barometer for this, really. When I started out 20 years ago, I couldn't fill a phone box. All I could fill was newspapers with absolute ridicule. And yet now, it's dramatically different, and people are opening their minds to things they would have dismissed by reflex action before. In other words, they're expanding their consciousness to greater and greater possibility, which manifests as greater and greater sense of possibility. Because one of the greatest ways of controlling people and keeping them in limitation is limit their sense of possibility. Because if you tell them that this is possible, and that's all that's possible, when someone comes out and says, this is happening, they go, that's not possible, that's ridiculous, and they laugh in the face of the truth. So as you expand your consciousness, you expand your perception of possibility, which means you then start to encompass things that you would have dismissed before. This is happening on an increasingly vast scale.
Is that also why you don't question a positive outcome of this whole...
Well, you see, where I'm going with this is, I think that the shift that's going to transform life on Earth from the prison to the paradise is going to be more like 2016. This vibrational change is having an effect, and at the same time the control system, which I have no doubt knows that this vibrational change is happening, and they're running round. They seem confident and they seem, you know, full of themselves and strutting around, but what they are is in a mad bloody panic, because they're trying to shut the humans down and batten down the hatches vibrationally to stop us taking or getting full advantage from this vibrational change. Because if we do that, then we awaken past the point where the control system can exist. Because the control system can only exist while people see themselves in terms of, I'm Ethel Jones and Charlie Smith, and I have no power, and I'm just one individual.